funniest man I knew who wasn't supposed to be funny. And he would be funny doing and saying.
Hollywood once whispered Angie Dickinson's name like a secret code, the woman who knew every powerful man's truth. But only in her final years did Angie start lifting that glittering curtain, spilling the stories nobody dared to tell for over 50 years. Behind the fame, behind the charm, Angie carried the hidden tales of the most untouchable names in showbiz. Yet one name refused to fade from her mind: Dean Martin, the smooth-talking legend with a glass in his hand and a grin that could melt ice. But Angie says there was more to Dean than anyone ever guessed. He was a man built out of masks, hiding more than just his feelings. Now, Angie's breaking her silence loud and clear. Her confessions peel back the layers of Dean's world. From whispers about a secret admirer chasing him through the 1960s, to her own private affair with the king of cool himself. She even dares to talk about that 20-year Cold War with Jerry Lewis and the shadowy side of the Rat Pack tangled up with Vegas power players and the Mafia's iron grip. So if you think you knew Dean Martin, get ready. Angie's truth is about to blow that illusion apart. I never really understood Dean, she admits. He was a mystery even Hollywood couldn't unlock. For decades, Angie Dickinson stood beside the brightest lights in Hollywood, smiling for cameras while hiding what she knew. As one of Dean's closest friends, she watched the real man behind the icon. A man layered in charm, pain, and secrets that no one dared expose until now. To the world, Dean Martin was the man with endless charm, smooth voice, perfect smile, always in control. But when the curtain dropped, those close to him saw something else. A man wrapped in shadows, secrets, and silent contradictions. The gossip never stopped in the 1960s, especially whispers about his love life that few dared to mention out loud. Hollywood, drenched in glamour and lies, protected its golden image like a sacred treasure. It was a world where the spotlight blinded everyone, filled with late-night parties, hidden affairs, and smiles that disguised the truth. While stars like Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. laughed their way through public scandals, Dean moved differently, quiet, mysterious, even a little hard to read. By the time Angie Dickinson worked with him on Rio Bravo in 1959, people in Hollywood were already whispering, "What's really up with Dean?" His charm on screen was undeniable, but off camera, he was unpredictable, never staying long at parties, slipping away like smoke before midnight. Angie saw what others missed. He didn't crave chaos or attention. He stayed in his own lane, calm yet untouchable. Even those closest to him couldn't fully unlock who Dean Martin really was. He was distant, reserved, and full of unanswered questions that left people guessing. During filming, Angie felt drawn to his quiet intensity. It was magnetic but puzzling. And as rumors grew louder, Hollywood insiders started asking behind closed doors, was Dean Martin hiding something? Some gossip columns even hinted at unusually close ties with his Rat Pack brother, Sammy Davis Jr. Even among Hollywood's biggest legends, men like Frank Sinatra, the king of swagger himself, Dean Martin stood apart. His quiet distance from women and his habit of slipping out of parties early only made the whispers louder. Rumors kept circling that his ties with certain men in the Rat Pack, from Sinatra to Truman Capote, came from a kind of closeness no one could quite explain. Behind the scenes, Angie Dickinson often found herself asking the same questions during late-night chats with other stars. She couldn't figure Dean out. He wasn't mysterious because he lacked emotion. He was mysterious because he hid it so perfectly. Angie once said that being near him felt like standing in front of an invisible wall. He was warm enough to pull you in, yet distant enough to keep you guessing. Privacy wasn't something Dean practiced. It was part of his DNA. Even as Hollywood buzzed with endless chatter about his coldness, his lonely nights, and the endless stories people made up, Angie sensed the truth. What the world saw on stage was only half of him. The other half stayed locked behind charm, music, and silence that only a few could sense but never touch. Dean Martin's world sparkled bright for the cameras, yet behind that glow, there were shadows only a few dared to notice. And now, as Angie finally breaks the silence, the curtain lifts on secrets Dean took to his grave. Then came the moment that changed everything. The day Dean Martin decided he'd never look Jerry Lewis in the eye again. It wasn't just the end of a friendship. It was the spark of a cold war that burned quietly for 20 long years. Their friendship didn't just fade. It shattered into a silence so deep it was as if Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis had never shared a single laugh together. From 1946 to 1956, they were Hollywood's unstoppable duo, the kings of comedy who ruled movies, radio, and television with unmatched chemistry and timing. Together, they made over 16 films that had America roaring with laughter. But behind those smiles, cracks were already forming. What the world saw was magic, but what brewed backstage was tension. Two men cut from completely different worlds were bound to collide sooner or later. Jerry Lewis, hailed as the father of modern comedy, lived and breathed perfection. Before every show, he'd rewrite scripts, fine-tune jokes, and rehearse until exhaustion, chasing flawlessness like an obsession. Every gesture, every punchline had to land just right, no matter the cost. Dean Martin, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. Cool, easygoing, and effortlessly funny. Dean didn't care for all the rules and routines. To him, the magic came from being natural. Walk on stage, do your thing, make 'em laugh, and move on. He couldn't stand the endless rehearsing or the pressure of Jerry's perfectionism. It drained him, stripped the fun right out of the act. As time went on, that creative clash turned personal. What started as small differences began to cut deep. Every disagreement left another mark. Even with all their fame and fortune, the gap between them only grew wider. Behind the spotlight and the applause, the laughter that once united them was slowly turning into the silence that would tear them apart. It was only a matter of time before Dean and Jerry's differences exploded. Jerry Lewis, the man who worshipped perfection, started seeing Dean Martin as careless, even lazy, someone who didn't care enough to polish his craft. They were total opposites in every sense. Jerry was a lightning bolt of energy, obsessed with precision and control, while Dean lived by instinct, smooth, spontaneous, and never one to overthink anything. Their clashing work styles turned every rehearsal into a silent battle. Jerry constantly pushed to rewrite scenes, tweak jokes, and fine-tune timing, but Dean brushed it off like it was nothing. While Jerry spent hours drilling lines and rehearsing endlessly, Dean preferred to stroll in, deliver his part with that natural charm, and call it a day. To Jerry, it felt like disrespect. He was pouring his soul into every detail, while Dean acted like the magic just happened by itself. Each ignored suggestion chipped away at Jerry's patience. The tension kept boiling until Jerry couldn't hold it in anymore. He felt betrayed, like Dean had checked out of the partnership they'd built together. And to make things worse, the public's praise only deepened the wound. Critics hailed Jerry as a comic genius, while Dean was reduced to the guy next to him. That cut deep. Dean's pride couldn't take it. Dean's calm attitude, his refusal to chase perfection, and his quiet rebellion against Jerry's control became too much to ignore. Their worlds no longer fit together. As rehearsals turned colder and Jerry's pressure grew heavier, Dean began to pull back, emotionally, mentally, completely. That slow withdrawal became the spark that ended it all. On July 24th, 1956, at the legendary Copacabana, Martin and Lewis performed together for the very last time. The night that closed an era of laughter and left an entire audience stunned in silence. That final night at the Copacabana shimmered with lights and applause, yet underneath the glamour, the air was ice cold. When the curtain fell, Dean Martin didn't say a single word to Jerry Lewis. No handshake, no good job, no goodbye. He just walked straight out the back door into the night, leaving everything they'd built behind without even glancing back. The silence was deafening, sharp, final, and impossible to ignore. That wasn't just the end of a show. It was the death of a brotherhood that had once lit up Hollywood. The silence between them didn't last a few weeks or months. It stretched for 20 long years. 2 entire decades of nothing. No calls, no letters, no chance meetings. Dean shut the door on Jerry completely, and once Dean closed the door, he never opened it again. Angie Dickinson once summed it up perfectly when she said, "When Dean closes a door, he never opens it again." That was Dean's way, quiet, proud, and absolute. Whenever he was hurt or disappointed, he didn't argue, he didn't explain, he just vanished. That same cold finality that ended his partnership with Jerry would echo through other relationships in his life, too. The aftermath of their breakup left a scar that never healed. For 20 years, there were no reunions, no apologies, no closure, just two legends walking separate paths under the same Hollywood sky. Dean Martin went on to conquer fame alone, his charm shining brighter than ever, but deep down, that split with Jerry Lewis remained an invisible wound, one that success could never truly cover. While Dean moved forward without looking back, Jerry Lewis struggled in the aftermath. Fame began to slip through his fingers as he fought to reclaim the glory they once shared, all while feeling deeply betrayed. Angie Dickinson, who had watched their partnership fall apart, saw it clearly. Dean Martin was a man who could love deeply, but once he decided to walk away, that was it. No one on earth could change his mind. Dean's silence wasn't coldness. It was finality. He let the past dissolve quietly, never to be reopened again. That unspoken distance between Dean and Jerry became one of the deepest wounds in Dean's life, a cut that time could never stitch back together. Even if they had lived to be 100, that fracture would have stayed frozen forever. Then came a new chapter, a glittering illusion wrapped in smoke and spotlight. On stage, Dean Martin played the role of the boozy, carefree playboy, always with a drink in hand and a smirk on his face. But the truth? That glass was filled with apple juice. His entire drunk charm was an act, a brilliant piece of theater he carried flawlessly through his career. By the 1960s, Las Vegas had become the city of endless nights, where neon lights burned bright, jazz filled the air, and secrets hid behind every velvet curtain. And at the center of it all stood the Rat Pack: Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop, the most dazzling crew in showbiz history. They ruled the Strip like kings, symbols of power, excess, and untouchable glamour. But among those larger-than-life personalities, Dean was always the most mysterious. Behind the tuxedo and the laughter, he remained a puzzle. The Rat Pack's smoothest star, shining in the spotlight, yet forever half hidden in the shadows. They were the definition of freedom. Wild nights, overflowing drinks, and rules made to be broken. The Rat Pack lived like legends, and the world watched in awe. But what fans saw under those bright stage lights was only a tiny slice of a much bigger, more complicated story. Dean Martin, famously crowned the King of Cool, wasn't just another performer. He was a natural-born entertainer. With his smooth jokes, effortless swagger, and that signature grin, he could light up any room without even trying. Yet behind that easy charm, there was a twist no one saw coming.
The bottles, the laughs, the image of Dean as the fun-loving drunk of the Rat Pack, all of it was part of an illusion. The man the world thought was sipping whiskey was actually holding apple juice. Every stumble, every slurred joke, every wink at the crowd, it was part of the show he built so perfectly that even his closest fans believed it. Dean had created the perfect character, the charming rebel with a drink in hand, living free and wild. But in reality, he was the calmest, most in-control man on stage.
Those who truly knew him swore that Dean was always the most sober member of the Rat Pack, rarely touching real alcohol even during their rowdiest nights. It was performance art at its finest, another mask he wore flawlessly. And when it came to romance, Dean didn't play the same game as the rest. While Sinatra and the others were tangled in headline-making affairs, Dean kept his distance. Many actresses admitted that he seemed almost shy around women, especially off stage. Some believed he stayed away on purpose, not out of disinterest, but to dodge the chaos and scandals that chewed up everyone else in Hollywood's golden era. There was always one thing that set Dean Martin apart from the rest. He was always the first to leave the party. While his Rat Pack brothers kept the music going till sunrise, Dean would quietly slip out before midnight. One of his close friends once said, "Dean's always the first to go home. He doesn't like crowds, doesn't mess around with late-night nonsense, and I think he does it to keep his image clean." Those words said it all. That was the real Dean Martin. He wasn't chasing headlines or scandal. He was protecting his peace. While others dove headfirst into chaos, Dean carried himself with effortless class and quiet elegance. But the media didn't want that story. They wanted the myth. To the press and the public, Dean Martin was the ultimate rat pack playboy. Liquor in hand, women by his side, and a grin that never faded. That image sold tickets, filled magazines, and made him the poster boy for Hollywood's Golden Rebellion. What they didn't see was the truth hiding behind the performance. The Dean Martin, who appeared wild and carefree, was actually living inside a role he'd carefully built. The drunk crooner with a glass in hand wasn't reality. It was theater, and Dean was the star of his own illusion. Off stage, he wanted quiet, for no flashing lights, no all-night parties, no gossip. He'd trade the chaos for calm every time. Yet he understood the deal. The public demanded a legend, not a man, so he gave them what they wanted. For years, the Rat Pack stood for freedom, indulgence, and rebellion, but behind that glitter, Dean Martin became something deeper, a mystery wrapped in a smile, a man everyone thought they knew, but no one truly did. Dean Martin, the man with that easy grin, quick wit, and so-called drinking problem, wasn't who the tabloids claimed he was. Beneath the jokes and the glass in his hand was a man far more composed than anyone imagined. The drunk playboy act that made him famous was nothing more than a clever disguise, a shield he wore to protect the quiet, private version of himself that only a few ever got to see. So who was the real Dean Martin? Was he truly a wild heart chasing danger, or a man simply craving peace away from Hollywood's endless noise? Only Dean ever knew the full truth. For everyone else, it remains a mystery, one that's become part of his enduring legend. To this day, people still talk about him, fascinated by the coolness, the secrets, and the layers he never revealed. But behind that cool charm and velvet voice was another world, one that shimmered with danger and power. Because off stage, Dean's path often crossed with some of the most feared names in America. The King of Cool didn't just share the stage with legends. He shared the same smoky rooms where the mafia pulled the strings. When people think of the Rat Pack, they picture long nights of jazz, whiskey, and glamour. But behind the glitter and laughter of Sinatra, Dean, and the crew, there was always a shadow, the presence of organized power that ran deeper than anyone dared admit. And in that world, one name stood above the rest, Sam Giancana, the ruthless boss of the Chicago outfit. His reach went far beyond the underworld, into Hollywood, Vegas, and even the Rat Pack itself. Many believed Giancana wasn't just a spectator, but a silent force who helped shape the rise of stars like Sinatra and Dean Martin under the blinding lights of Las Vegas. By the late 1950s, the whispers had grown too loud for even the government to ignore. The FBI started opening multiple case files, digging into the strange ties between Sam Giancana and members of the Rat Pack, and what they found hinted that these weren't just friendly hangouts or showbiz collaborations. Behind the smiles and stage lights, there were secrets linking Hollywood's brightest names to America's darkest underworld. Sam Giancana, the Chicago mob boss who ruled from the shadows, had built powerful connections that reached deep into Hollywood's golden circle. And Dean Martin's name was right there among them. Years later, declassified FBI files revealed Dean listed as one of Giancana's known social contacts, setting off endless rumors about his true involvement with organized crime. Reports said Dean attended Giancana's private gatherings in Las Vegas. Exclusive, secretive parties filled with mob figures, casino bosses, and high-rolling power brokers. These weren't just fancy social events. They were meetings wrapped in silence and coded agreements where loyalty meant everything and loose talk could end careers. Or worse, one former security guard from the Sands Hotel, where many of these nights unfolded, remembered something that still gives people chills. He said, Dean Martin never looked scared around the mob bosses. He acted like he'd known them his whole life. Nothing ever rattled him. That calm confidence in the company of dangerous men only deepened the enigma surrounding him. To the public, Dean was the king of charm, a man living for the stage, laughter, and spotlight. But away from the cameras, there was another version of Dean Martin, one who moved with ease through smoky back rooms and whispered deals, a man who seemed to balance between Hollywood's glitz and the mafia's quiet power. Dean Martin wasn't just a Vegas superstar. He was a man quietly protected by some of the most powerful figures in the underworld. Behind the glitz, behind the laughter, there were whispers that unseen hands were guarding his every move. While the public saw a smiling Dean, sipping drinks and owning the stage, those inside Hollywood knew the truth was far murkier. Rumors spread that Dean's unstoppable rise in Las Vegas wasn't built on charm alone. According to insiders, his success came with protection, the kind that came from people who operated in the shadows, behind those glittering casino doors where high rollers and mob bosses mingled. Deals were made to keep Dean safe and his career untouchable. The whispers never stopped. No one dared to confirm them, but everyone felt them lingering in the smoke-filled air. It was said that Dean's name floated through the same underworld corridors where money, influence, and silence ruled. The very stage lights that shone on him were rumored to be powered by connections that stretched far beyond Hollywood's reach. In that hidden world, truth and illusion blurred until no one could tell where one ended and the other began. Vegas was more than a playground for stars like Dean and Sinatra. It was the meeting ground of power and danger. The so-called parties weren't just about drinks and music. They were quiet councils where decisions were made, about shows, contracts, and sometimes about people's futures. Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin weren't just entertainers. They were part of an unspoken circle where fame, loyalty, and survival were all tangled together. And though the rumors about Dean's ties to the mafia were never proven, one thing no one could deny was this. Dean Martin's life in Las Vegas wasn't just a career. It was a carefully protected empire built under the neon glow of secrecy and power. Dean Martin's name will forever carry the image of a man untouched by Hollywood's storms and unshaken by the whispers of the underworld. He moved through the chaos with his own rhythm, smooth, steady, and untouchable. Maybe it was luck, or maybe it was the quiet protection of powerful friends in the dark. But Dean never seemed to flinch, no matter what surrounded him. That calm mystery became his signature, turning him into one of Hollywood's most magnetic and unknowable icons. As one of the key figures of the Rat Pack, Dean Martin still lives on in the world's memory as the symbol of effortless glamour and charm. But behind the glow of the spotlight lies a story no one outside the shadows could ever fully tell. A story that only those who moved within the mafia's world might have truly understood. And then came another secret, one that had nothing to do with power or danger, but with love. Dean Martin and Angie Dickinson never publicly admitted what happened between them, but Hollywood never stopped whispering about it. Their quiet connection became one of Tinseltown's most mysterious romances, a secret affair that, if revealed, could have sent shockwaves through the entire industry. It all began in 1959 on the set of Rio Bravo. Dean, the king of cool, met Angie, the rising beauty everyone was talking about on Saturdays, and something clicked. Their connection wasn't about grand gestures or public affection. It was about subtle glances, shared laughter, and moments that spoke louder than words. Even the crew at Warner Brothers started noticing. Dean, who was famous for finishing his scenes and disappearing right after, suddenly started hanging around just to talk to Angie. The man known for dodging romantic distractions was suddenly lingering, laughing, and enjoying every second with her. To everyone watching, it was clear something real was unfolding between them, and no one could quite explain it. Producer Jerry Bressler once joked, if those two aren't dating, then Hollywood's running out of magic. And honestly, everyone on the Rio Bravo set seemed to agree. The spark between Dean Martin and Angie Dickinson was undeniable, the kind of chemistry you can't fake, no matter how good the acting. Even though neither of them ever confirmed a romance, their closeness spoke louder than any headline could. They were inseparable during filming, always together, both on set and off. The cast and crew could feel the electricity between them, though Dean and Angie kept their secrets sealed tight. They never made public statements, never flaunted their bond, but anyone who watched them knew there was something special simmering under the surface. Years later, Angie Dickinson would softly describe what they had as sweet but fragile. To her, it was something delicate, a quiet connection that neither dared to label, even though everyone else could see it. Their unspoken affection became one of Hollywood's quietest yet most enduring legends. A love story that was never officially declared, but still left its mark on those who were lucky enough to witness it. Why couldn't they make it public? No one really knows how deep it went. But one thing's certain. Dean and Angie shared something rare in a town built on illusion. Maybe the answer lies in who Dean was at his core. A man who hated drama, avoided chaos, and kept his private life locked away from Hollywood's hungry spotlight. He understood that going public would have brought noise, gossip, and career trouble neither of them needed. So instead, they protected it, quietly, gracefully, and forever. Their love became more than a secret. It became a piece of Hollywood legends, a hidden romance wrapped in mystery, remembered long after the cameras stopped rolling. It was a bond that was never spoken of, yet impossible to forget. The love between Dean Martin and Angie Dickinson lived in whispers, unseen but unforgettable to anyone who caught even a glimpse of it. In the end, their silence became the heartbeat of their story, turning it into one of Hollywood's most mysterious and haunting secrets. But love wasn't the only mystery surrounding Dean Martin. Behind the bright lights and that effortless grin, he lived in a world few ever touched, even those closest to him. On stage, he was the king of cool, the smooth voice that could melt a crowd, but off stage, Dean was a man walking through his own shadows, quietly protecting the parts of himself he never wanted exposed. Hollywood adored him as the symbol of calm confidence. But in private, Dean's life was tangled with quiet heartbreak and complicated family ties. Those who truly knew him said there was always a part of Dean that stayed unreachable, even to the people he loved most. Dean's personal life told a story of devotion, distance, and emotional walls. His first marriage to Betty McDonald began in 1941 and lasted until 1949. 8 years of shared life that ended quietly, leaving behind little more than questions about why it fell apart. It marked the end of his earliest chapter, the beginning of the guarded man he would later become. Then came his longest marriage to Jean Bieger. From 1949 to 1973, a union that lasted 24 years and brought them 3 children. To the world, they looked like the perfect Hollywood couple, but behind the smiles was strain. Jean was known as the enduring wife, the woman who stood by Dean even when life with him was far from easy. Dean Martin's life wasn't just about fame. It was a constant dance between light and shadow, love and silence, truth and the image he built so perfectly. Those who truly knew Dean Martin often said the same thing. He was a good man, a solid provider, but emotionally he was miles away. Family accounts reveal that even though he made sure everyone was cared for, his heart always seemed somewhere else. His third marriage to Catherine Horn began in 1973 when Dean was already 56. They had 1 daughter together, but the marriage lasted only 3 years. By 1976, it was over. Another chapter that ended quietly, reinforcing what so many already knew. Dean Martin, the man who could charm the world, was nearly impossible to hold on to at home. Despite having 7 children across his 3 marriages, those closest to Dean often described him as emotionally distant, present in body, but absent in spirit. One quote from his son, Dean Paul Martin, hit people right in the heart. "My father was in the room, but his mind was somewhere far away." Those few words revealed everything. The loneliness that sat behind Dean's calm eyes and the invisible wall that separated him from those who loved him most. Dean Martin lived in a world entirely his own. He didn't share his thoughts, didn't open up his feelings, not even with family. It wasn't coldness. It was just who he was. There was a quiet sadness in that solitude, a part of him that Hollywood lights could never reach. Angie Dickinson, who worked closely with him on Rio Bravo, noticed it too. She described Dean as a man who seemed locked inside himself, someone kind but unreachable. Dean always lived in his own world, she said, never letting anyone in, not even the people he loved. Her words captured the essence of who he was. Loyal, dependable, but emotionally guarded to the core. Dean Martin's mystery didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. It followed him home, shaping a life that looked glamorous from the outside, yet was quietly filled with distance and silence that no one could break through. Dean Martin's home life was wrapped in silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy quiet that comes when someone keeps all their feelings locked inside. Behind that smooth grin and effortless cool, he rarely let anyone see what was really going on beneath the surface. He could captivate millions with a single smile, yet inside, he was battling a loneliness few could imagine. His failed marriages, emotional distance from his children, and the weight of a life spent behind walls of charm created a portrait of contradiction. The man celebrated as the king of cool was, in truth, a soul quietly trapped by his own defenses. The stage gave him confidence, the spotlight gave him purpose, but the moment the lights went out, he was left alone with thoughts he never shared and emotions he never voiced. Despite his glamorous image and all the stories about his romantic escapades, Dean carried deep emotional scars, invisible wounds that shaped every relationship he had. His family life was complicated, full of love that struggled to find its way through silence. People might have sensed that sadness when he performed, a kind of gentle melancholy behind the laughter, but very few ever got close enough to see the real man behind the mask. Dean Martin lived his entire life in contrast, adored by the public yet distant from those who loved him most. On stage, he was flawless, radiant, untouchable. Off stage, he was quiet, detached, and often lost inside his own thoughts. He was both a Hollywood icon and a man burdened by a loneliness that not even fame could fix. So, what do you think about Dean Martin, the man who hid his pain behind a perfect smile and a glass of apple juice? Was he the ultimate performer or a lonely soul trapped in his own legend? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment for more untold stories about Hollywood's most fascinating stars.